The sun rose like any other day, but the room was too quiet. Too still, and in the stillness I realized he wasn't breathing. Not like before, not like yesterday. In the silence, that silence, it wasn't peaceful. It was loud, so loud I could hear my heartbeat, and with every beat I waited for him to move, for him to open his eyes, for him to whisper our morning joke, but he didn't. He didn't wake up. And that's how everything broke. In a moment that never made a sound, my world shattered. I thought I knew pain. I thought I had seen loss, but nothing prepares you. For the moment your only friend doesn't wake up, not because he was tired, not because he was sick, but because something, somewhere, took him and left me behind that morning. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just sat there staring, waiting. Because denial is colder than death, and hope can be a cruel thing. I waited for hours. And when the sun climbed higher, I knew he wasn't coming back. But what if he didn't? Just die? What if he was taken? What if I was meant to find out what happened? Because that night before we fell asleep, he whispered something strange. And now that whisper won't let me go. This is not just a story about death. It's a story about friendship, about memories buried in silence, about secrets that don't die with the body, and a bond that goes deeper than the grave. This is the day everything changed. This is the day my only friend didn't wake up. The morning started like every other, but something was already wrong in the air. You don't notice it at first, not when you're half asleep, not when your mind still thinks it's dreaming. But when I opened my eyes, the weight of it was already in the room, a heaviness like the room had forgotten how to breathe. I reached for my glasses, slipped them on, turned to the other side of the room. He was still, so still his blanket hadn't moved. His chest wasn't rising, and in that frozen silence, I felt a chill crawl over my skin. "Hey," my voice cracked through the quiet. No response, just the soft hum of the fan above us. I tried again, louder, firmer. Still nothing. I sat up, heart beginning to race, but I told myself it was fine. Maybe he was in deep sleep. Maybe he was pretending. He always did things like that. We joked about it, about scaring each other awake. But this didn't feel like a joke. I walked to his bed, shook his shoulder. It was warm to warm, like his body hadn't realized. The soul was missing. His face was peaceful to peaceful, like he had just drifted away. Without warning, my knees buckled. I fell next to him, held his wrist, no pulse, tried again, still no beat. The kind of silence that followed, it wasn't natural. It was the kind of silence that screamed, "Something is wrong." I couldn't scream, couldn't move, time didn't stop, it just became unreal. Every minute after that was a blur. I called his name again and again, as if my voice could pull him back, but he didn't move, he didn't flinch, he didn't open his eyes. That's when the panic set in. I ran to get help. People came, voices filled the room. Rushed footsteps, hands checking heads, shaking eyes, avoiding mine, and then, that word dead, they said it. Like it was a fact, like it belonged in a textbook, like it didn't just rip a hole through my chest. But that night before sleep took us, he told me something strange. Something I didn't understand. "Not then," he said. "If I don't wake up tomorrow, don't believe it's natural." And I laughed, called him a drama king. Told him to shut up and sleep. He smiled, closed his eyes, and that was the last time I heard his voice. Now it echoes that one sentence over and over. If I don't wake up, don't believe it's natural. What did he mean? What was he afraid of? What did he know? They said it was his heart. An undetected failure, sudden, peaceful, clean, but nothing about this feels clean. The room smells like grief, like something ancient. And wrong, his notebook is still open. The pen still rests where he left it. Half a sentence, half a thought, interrupted by death, but I don't think it was death that interrupted him. I pick up the notebook. His handwriting was always neat to neat. For someone so chaotic, the last line reads, "They're watching again," and then a long line across the page like his hand jerked or was pulled. And my breath catches. Who was watching? What was he writing about? Who was he afraid of? The day drags. Unlike a dream, I can't wake up from. People come in and out, voices trying to comfort, but none of them knew him. Not like I did, not like a friend does, the kind of knowing that lives in the quiet spaces, in shared glances, in laughter after midnight. In tears we never told anyone about. We were more than friends, we were brothers, in a world that never understood us. Now half that world is gone. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at the ceiling, listening for something, anything, and then I heard it, a whisper, not outside, but inside my head. His voice clear, soft, "Don't trust them." I sat up, heart pounding. I looked around. No one there, nothing there, but I know what I heard. I know his voice. I know he's trying to tell me something. Next morning, I went to the library, our favorite place. He always joked that it smelled like secrets. I sat at the table we always used, opened the notebook again. The pages before the last held nothing unusual. Lists, sketches, random poetry. But then, taped beneath the back cover, I found something, a photo, old black and white. 2 men dressed in uniforms I didn't recognize, and scribbled behind it a sentence, "They die the same way every time." Every time. What did he mean? Was this about someone else or himself? Was he part of something? Did he know something he shouldn't have? Showed it to no one. Not yet, because deep down something told me. Someone was watching me now. Toei walked home with the photo in my pocket. The sky was cloudless, but it felt like rain. I passed the alleyway near our street and paused because something moved a shadow too quick. 2 really turned nothing. No one but I know I saw it, just like I know his death. Wasn't just death back in our room. I kept replaying everything, his words, his fears, his notebook, and that whisper, "Don't trust them." But who were they? The doctors, the school, our classmates, someone else, something else, something else, something else. Soft measured outside my door, then silence. I didn't open it. I just waited, holding my breath, waiting for the footsteps to return. They did it, but in the morning there was a note slid under my door. Typed, no name, just one line. He was chosen. Stop digging, or you're next. My hand shook, but my resolve didn't, because now I knew he didn't just die, he was taken, marked, silenced. And maybe, just maybe, I'm next. But I won't stop. I can't, because he was my only friend. And I need to know why. I need to know what he discovered, and I need to finish what he started, because the day he didn't wake up was not the end of his story, it was the beginning of mine. I stared at the note in my hand. Its edges trembled not because of wind, but because of fear. My fear. It felt cold, like it had been written by someone who didn't need warmth to survive. He was chosen. Stop digging, or you're next. Each word sank into my chest, heavy, sharp, really turned the note over. Blank, no signature, no clue, but I knew what it meant. Someone didn't want me to ask questions. Someone was afraid I'd find the answers. I looked at the photo again, the uniforms, the strange handwriting, the words, every time. There was something repeating, some cycle, some truth buried under layers of silence. I thought about him again, his laugh, the way he'd throw popcorn at the screen during old movies, the way he hated loud noises, the way he always knew when I was lying. He saw through everything. Maybe he saw something he shouldn't. Javi didn't go to class that day. I walked for hours through streets we used to explore, past the bakery that gave us free bread. Once past the church with the cracked bell. I needed space to think, to breathe, to remember him without breaking eye. Sat by the river, watched leaves float past like ghosts, pulled out his notebook again. There was something underlined 3 times on page 7, a list of numbers, no context, just this, 174923518, and underneath one word, wake. I didn't know what it meant, but it didn't feel random. Nothing he wrote ever was. My phone buzzed a message. Unknown number, just coordinates. No words, no sender. Hesitated fingers, cold heart loud, but I opened my map, typed them in it. Led to the edge of town, the old observatory, abandoned for decades. We used to joke it was haunted. Now I wasn't so sure. It wasn't so sure. It wasn't. He took a deep breath, told myself I wouldn't go, that it was a trap, that it could be dangerous, that I had already lost enough, but my legs didn't listen, neither did my heart. By evening, I stood in front of it, the gates rusted, the windows dark. I pushed the metal slowly. It creaked, screamed, then gave in. Inside, dust floated like memories, cobwebs stretched like warnings, and in the center of the main hall, a light was on. One single bulb flickering. I stepped closer. The room smelled of old books and wet stone, and then I saw Ita table, and on it, his backpack. I knew it was his, the patch on the side, the frayed strap he never fixed. The inside smelled like his cologne. I opened it with shaking hands. Inside, more notes, a small recorder, and a photograph, this time of me and him, taken just 2 weeks ago, but the date on the back read October 4th, 1976. I froze, because that wasn't possible. We weren't even born then. My head spun. I dropped the photo. It landed face down, and there, in faded ink, were the words, "They come for the ones who remember who comes." Remember what? How could we be in a photo from 1976? The recorder clicked on its own, and his voice filled the room. Low, breathless, like he was hiding. "If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it. It means they found me first. But you're not too late. Not yet." I covered my mouth. Tears welled in my eyes. His voice so clear, so alive. "You have to finish it. Find the rest, the code, the room, under the chapel. They never search there. It's all hidden beneath the stone. They think you won't look, but I know you. You will." The recording ended. Silence again, but it wasn't empty. It was loud with grief, with questions, with a need that burned deeper than fury. Looked at the photo again, studied the background, the building, the trees, the street lamp. It wasn't just any place. It was the old chapel near the school, the one boarded up after the fire 10 years ago. Never been inside. No one had, not since the fire. But now I had to go because he'd left a path, a trail only I could follow on my way back. I passed the alley again. This time there was a shape, a man, wearing all black, just standing still, watching. I walked faster, didn't look back, but I felt his eyes like hooks in my spine. Back in my room, I locked the door, pulled the curtains, turned off the lights, and sat on the floor with all the clues. The photo, the notebook, the coordinates, the recording, and the number SIN 749235. 1/8 the first opened his old book of ciphers. He loved puzzles. He always said every answer is hidden in a question. I tried the basic A1 cipher. 17Q4 equals D9 equals I. 23 equals W5 equals E18 equals RQD IWER. Gibberish didn't make sense then. I rearranged WRDEQ. Still nothing. I sighed, closed my eyes, thought of him again, and it hit me. Wake. That was the key. Maybe the numbers spelled that word. W equals 23A equals 1K equals 11E equals 5, but none of those matched the sequence. Maybe it wasn't a cipher at all. Maybe it was a date or coordinates or something else. Say, lay down on the floor, notebook on my chest, recorder in my hand, whispers filling my ears again, his voice just out of reach in my dream. He stood by the river, waved, smiled, said, "You're close, but don't trust the man with no shadow." I woke up, gasping, heart racing, and there on my window, a single fingerprint from the inside. I stared at the fingerprint on the glass. It hadn't been there the night before. I was sure of it. And I lived alone, now alone, with the echoes of a voice that wouldn't leave me. The print was small, almost delicate, but there was something wrong with it. The pattern didn't look human, more like loops interrupted by slashes, as if whoever left it wasn't made like UC. Pressed my own hand beside it. Mine looked normal, familiar. Living that one, it felt cold just looking at UC. Didn't clean it. I couldn't, because it might be a message, a mark, a warning, or a clue the next morning. I skipped school again. My body was there, but my heart wasn't. It was somewhere between the photo dated before I existed and a chapel that might be hiding something. Beneath stone, I packed his notebook, the photo, the recorder, and the map. I took a flashlight, some gloves, and the chain with his name on it. He never took it off until the night he didn't wake up. Now it was midnight. Told no one where I was going, because trust was a memory now. Even the mirror didn't feel safe anymore. The chapel was 3 blocks from school, hidden behind vines and silence. Its doors were boarded, its windows shattered and painted black, but the back had a cracked wall, something. We'd always joked about breaking through. Now I wasn't joking. It took me 20 minutes to squeeze through dust, filled my mouth, my clothes tore at the edges. But I made it inside, and there it was, dark, ruined, silent, but not empty. I stepped softly. The floor groaned beneath every footstep. The pews were broken, the altar was scorched, and behind it, a stone trapdoor, almost invisible. But not to someone who knew how. He thought. He always said, if you hide something beneath fire, no one will dare touch it. I brushed away the ash. The trapdoor groaned, rust screamed, and cold air kissed my face below. A stairwell carved in old rock spiraling down, far deeper than any chapel should go. Hesitated, then stepped in. Each step echoed not just ahead, but behind, like someone was walking with me, or above me, or beneath. May didn't look back. The air grew colder. My flashlight flickered. I heard water dripping, and then a sound, faint but real, breathing. Not. Minnie froze, held my breath. Listened. It was slow, measured, patient, like it had all the time in the world, and then it stopped. I took another step, another, and found a door metal, old, locked, with a code pad, but there, scratched beside it, was the same sequence, 1749235. 1/8. I stared at it, then entered. The numbers beep, 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 clicked. The door opened, slow, like it hadn't been touched in years. Inside was not what I expected. It was a room, clean, bright, with walls covered in photos, notes, dates, and in the center, a single chair facing a projector screen. A looping video faces, some I knew, some I didn't, but one was my friend, alive, speaking to someone off camera, his face pale, eyes heavy, but his voice clear. They won't stop, they never stop, we're just one version, one thread, but they keep resetting each time we die, they watch, they record, and they start again. My heart stopped reset. What did that mean? He looked at the camera. Eyes locking with mine across time. If you made it here, then you're the last, the others didn't, but maybe you don't believe the world you live in. It's built on loops. You have to break it before they do. The screen went black. I couldn't move, couldn't speak, because everything was wrong. Photos lined the walls, dates beside them, death. Dates all the same, always July 9th, but the years they stretched back 198, 4199, 119972, 005, 2005, 2012, 20202024, and now, my friend, 2025. I stepped closer to the wall, found his photo, and next to it, mine dim, but there blank space beside it, no date yet. They were watching us, recording us, repeating us. We were part of something, a cycle, a test, a loop hand. My friend, he figured it out. That's why he died. That's why he whispered, if I don't wake up, don't believe it's natural, because it wasn't. He turned. Heard a noise, soft, a whisper, a shuffled in. I saw Itaman standing in the corner, tall, still no shadow. His eyes glowed, not with light, but with silence. He stepped forward. But I didn't run, not yet. You weren't meant to come here, his voice was layered, echoing like more than one person was speaking. You were supposed to forget. I held up the recorder, pressed play. My friend's voice filled the room. You can't erase me, the man flinched, just for a second, then smiled. They all say that before they disappear. I took a step back, but he didn't follow. He just said, you have two choices, forget and live, remember and vanish. I asked, what if I remember and stay? He paused and said, no one ever has. Then he was gone, not vanished, just erased, like a smudge pulled from the page. I was alone again in the room. The photos, the recordings all real, but fading. The projector clicked, flickered shut, down in the metal door behind me, locked itself again. The sound of the lock echoed down the stairs, cold, final, like a verdict, like a coffin. Lady didn't panic. Not yet, because I still had his notebook, his voice in the recorder, and the words that kept ringing in my head. You have to finish it. I turned in slow circles, tried the door, nothing. I knocked, waited, silence. Answered. I turned the flashlight on again, searched the walls. Found something carved low near the floor, a single line. Not all doors are exits, some are mirrors. I didn't know what it meant, but this place had no rules, no gravity, no logic, only memory, only secrets. I went back to the wall of photos, took mine down. The back was blank. I turned it over again, still blank, but as I held it, the surface began to shift. Waves of heat rose from it, and then letters began to rise, sketched by something unseen, a new line, version 13. Unbroken. I backed away, unbroken. Was that me? Was that why I was still here? I remembered the man with no shadow, his words, you were supposed to forget. Then maybe every version before me had forgotten. Maybe that's why they died. Maybe that's why he didn't wake up, but I didn't forget. And now I was still breathing. I went to the far wall. There was a bookcase hidden behind a torn curtain. Its shelves empty except for one book, leather-bound. No title, no author. Opened it, and my breath caught pages filled with handwriting, his every word. His voice, but they weren't notes, they were memories. Things we had never spoken aloud. Moments I had forgotten, secrets I never told him, but they were here, written in ink that pulsed when I touched it. How could he know these things unless the loop didn't just reset time, it reset us, our minds, our memories, but some part of him held. On page after page he tried to warn himself, every version of him each time. It ended with the same sentence, they took me again, but I hope this time I become a whisper loud enough to wake you. And he woke me. The ground beneath me shifted. The room tilted, and suddenly I was falling not through space, but through moments, memories not mine, flashes of other lives, other rooms, other deaths. My friend over and over, dying in different ways, always around the same age, always near me, always. Before I could say goodbye, then Blackwin, I opened my eyes. I was outside, back near the river, but the world looked wrong, colors too bright, edges too sharp. I looked at my hands. They shimmered slightly, like I wasn't fully here then. I saw him sitting by the water, throwing stones, smiling. He looked up, as if he'd been waiting. You made it, he said. I didn't speak, couldn't, my chest was too full. He stood, walked over, touched my shoulder. "It's not over," he said, "but now you remember. That changes everything." I asked him, "What is this place?" He smiled, half broken, half beautiful. "This is the in-between, the space they can't control. Where the forgotten versions come to wait." I asked how many of us are here. He looked at the trees, and hundreds of figures stepped from them all, wearing his face, all versions of him, some older, some younger, some scarred, some smiling. They kept wiping us, resetting us, testing how far the mind bends before it breaks. But you didn't break. He handed me something, a mirror, cracked old die. Looked into it, and saw them, the watchers, faceless, floating, observing. They don't live like us. They record, they study, they loop, but they made one mistake this time. I asked what he looked me in the eyes. "You loved me enough to remember the moment." Shattered. I was back in the stone room alone, sweating, the projector still off. But this time, there was a second door I hadn't seen it before. No handle, just light pouring from its cracks. I walked to it, pressed my hand against it. The warmth welcomed me then. It opened, and inside, another room. A screen, and on it a control panel with 3 buttons, RSTART. Forget WAK. My heart pounded. This was it. The center, the heart of the loop. Choice RESTART meant everything would begin again. Forget would erase all memory. WAK didn't know, but I pressed ETAN. The world cracked, light, sound, memories. His voice, my voice, our laughter, all flooded back, and suddenly I was in my room again. But it was the first day before he died. He was asleep in his bed, breathing softly. I ran to him, held his hand, his eyes opened. "Surprised, you remember?" he whispered. I nodded. Tears falling, he smiled and said, "Then this time we fight." We sat in silence, the kind that hums with meaning, the kind that speaks louder than words ever could. His hand was warm in mine, and real, so painfully real. The sun had not yet risen, but something else had awareness, memory, a sense that time no longer belonged to them. It belonged to Yuge. Sat up slowly, eyes still tired, but deeper, somehow like he'd been awake for centuries. Trapped in a dream he couldn't end. "I didn't think it would work," he said, his voice cracked raw from all the silences he had screamed through. In the past I just nodded. There was no manual for this, no guide for waking up inside your own timeline. Twice he stood, looked around the room, touched the edge of his desk, opened the notebook. Every page was empty again. "But," he whispered, "they're not watching yet. We have a window, a short one." I asked, "What do we do now?" He smiled, the same crooked grin from 100 lifetimes ago, and said, "We write it all down. Everything, every memory, every code, every loop. We document it so they can't erase it again. We worked for hours, through dawn, through breakfast, through everything normal people did. That day we stayed in," he wrote, I remembered. "We matched pieces like puzzle edges made of pain. Then that night, the lights flickered, the window frosted over. Even though it was summer, he looked at me, calm, focused. They found us, but this time we're ready." I grabbed the recorder, pressed record, began to speak. If they were going to erase us again, they'd hear our voices first. They'd feel our resistance. Suddenly the room cracked, not physically, but the way a mirror bends before it shatters. Figure appeared, not the shadowless man, but something deeper, darker, clothed in static. Faceless but familiar. Embodiment of the loop, the system that had stolen him, stolen me, stolen hundreds of us. Didn't speak, but we heard it. "In our heads, in our bones, you have breached your loop. You were meant to forget." My friend stood stronger than ever and said, "We remembered now. We choose." The air trembled, reality bent. The room began to disappear, pulled apart by forces we couldn't see, but we held on. To each other, to the words, to the truth. He pulled something from beneath the floor, a small glass orb, glowing blue, like memory given Shaipai. Didn't ask what it was, I just trusted him. He threw it toward the static figure, and everything stopped. Time, sound, color. Then the orb exploded on. Suddenly we were standing outside in the forest by the river. No buildings, no walls, no machines, just sky, just wind, just silence. But not the same silence from the day he didn't wake up. This one was whole, living, full. He turned to me, eyes wide, filled with something I hadn't seen before. "Freedom, it's over," he whispered, but I wasn't sure, because we were still here, still remembering. "What if this is another loop?" I asked. He thought, then said, "Maybe it is. But this time we're aware, and awareness is the beginning of freedom." We spent days by the river watching stars rise, listening to the silence, learning to live without fear. But deep down we knew they might come again, the watchers, the loops, the shadows. So we wrote again, only this time not just memories but instructions for the next Ones in case we forgot again, in case someone else found the notebook, the orb, the mirror, the room under the chapel, the last page of the book read. If you're reading this, you're not alone. We've done this before, but each time we remember, the loop weakens, and one day it will break for good. Then one morning he looked at me, eyes softer now if I don't wake up tomorrow. He began, but I stopped him, held his hand, and whispered, "You will, because this time I won't forget we slept under the stars that night. No alarms, no walls, just dreams that didn't hurt hand when morning came." He opened his eyes and smiled because, finally, he had woken up.